Tim Ryan.
Zach Miller.
Greetings, Earthling.
Yeah. I was just thinking, we do a pretty decent job. We say we're going to go live every Thursday at 11. We do a pretty good job we're usually within the minute.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to us.
I also think, just like with anything, that repetition is just a natural thing. And so it's just nice because you're like, okay, like it becomes accustomed to people. And so I always recommend people that if they're going to start a show or do something, have it on some sort of repetition so that the audience can build that in, right? Like the example I always give is the Today Show is every day at 7 a.m., right? I don't watch the Today Show. I haven't watched that show in forever, but
yeah. Yeah. And we don't necessarily do the show live at 11 because that's where we expect the biggest audience to be. We do it so that if you want to join in live, you certainly can. And then we push everything out.
I do believe our first episode about 5 years ago today, maybe 5 years to the date, to be honest, was at noon.
Yeah.
You were in a different room in your crib at that point.
I was in the downstairs office.
And here we are still doing the office work from home thing. A lot of people still doing that. I think it's nice. It's good to still get out too, a little bit of mixture. But I think if you can be respectful of your time, your teammates' time, employers' time, things like that, I think those are probably the biggest challenges that people have. But if you can be respectful of that and actually get it done, it's cool. I think it allows a lot of flexibility for individuals.
Yeah. With the caveat, you have to be a high performer. I think that
that's kind of what I'm saying by respecting your time, right?
Yeah.
I'm excited for today's guest. I met him quite a while ago. I would say 2010, 2011 time frame. I feel like it was from Joel Need. I could be wrong. Did we meet at Baxter's for the first time? And that's when I was talking about Hatch, or had we met before then? Because that's the first thing that I'm thinking of. We got Ned Lilly in the house.
Hello. You got a better memory than me, man. What came first, Hatch or Start Norfolk?
Start Norfolk. So we had done Start Norfolk. The first one was November 11th, 12th, and 13th, I believe, of 2011.
Okay.
That's super interesting. I never heard that question before. I always thought the Hatch came first and then Start Norfolk was, I didn't realize it was opposite.
We had done a series of like monthly meetups, drinks downtown, user groups. So I think we had like a couple dev meetups and UX, AIGA type of things that we were hosting. And then it was like, I'd gone to Atlanta for a VC conference. I can't remember, it was Southeastern Venture Conference.
Mm.
And I met this kid there. I think the thing was called Trip Lingo, Jesse Maddox. Don't ask me why I have this memory. And he was like, I just won this competition called Start Atlanta. I was like, cool, tell me about it. And I was like, that's cool. I feel like maybe we could do something like that in Norfolk. So I emailed the organizer and he was like, you'll never work there. I was like, love it. Thanks for saying no. So then I started, I'd met, who was the guy we talked about last week from ODU Innovation Research Park?
Dude.
I can't. There's the name.
Unwind.
Tom Osha. Tom Osha. I was like, hey, can we host this at your venue? He's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Just don't screw up anything. So we basically just put all these different people that we had been working with in one room, did Start Norfolk. Then after that, it was like, oh, maybe we could work with these companies for a longer period of time, give them a little bit of capital. We'd done another Start Norfolk, so we had done Start Norfolk 2. And then in between Start Norfolk 2, I believe, and Hatch starting in like July, we got convinced TechCrunch to come to town. You were at that party, weren't you, Ned?
Yeah.
And then Hatch started, and then we did 3 classes of that. But yeah, I think I met you at Baxter's.
That sounds
How long
right.
had xTuple been around at that point, at the beginning of all this?
For a while. xTuple was founded in 2001.
Okay.
Like say a fit of optimism a couple of weeks after 9/11, which turns out maybe wasn't the best time to start a company, but made it through. made it through the financial crisis in 2008. So had the scars to show for it, but all good. And the xTuple ended up being the beer sponsor for Start Norfolk both times. 3 times?
The one we talked about last week. Someone was asking us about that keg journey. The 16 keg smart mouth xTuple. We also had the mugs, or not the mugs, the pint glasses.
Yep, still got them.
Oh yeah, those were
it's faded. I've actually got one right here. You can't really see it. You can barely make out the smart mouth logo on that side, and then can you see the X there on the other side?
Yeah, a little bit. But I
made my own little Start Norfolk. It said smart mouth on one side, xTuple on the other side, and it said started in Norfolk, and then whatever the year was that we'd found.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I always tell people that are going to do swag, don't just buy swag for people to buy it. You do things that people will use.
No.
Because if you're just doing something stupid and you're like, oh, but it costs so much money, it's like this is not going to be used by someone. What will someone use on a lot of people are starting to do Yetis, which are expensive, I guess, but like the Yetis within their logo on it. But it's like, do something that people will wear. Like our shirts, I remember at Start Norfolk, it was always design a shirt that people will actually wear, not just be another, Gildan crappy shirt that they might wear to the gym.
Itchy, scratchy, woolly, yeah.
Okay, so 2001, little after 9/11, what was the genesis of xTuple back then?
So I'd been prior to starting the company, I'd been at Landmark Communications for many years, and kind of bounced around from operational roles to the new ventures group. So sort of playing corporate VC. Worked on a couple of acquisitions, a couple of startups, and sort of the last, a bunch of interesting stuff that had built out a online real-time vacation rental properties reservation business that tied into some travel guidebooks that Landmark had an online auction prior to eBay going public, if that doesn't date me. But the last stop on that road was an idea called Great Bridge, which was kind of roughly to do for the open source database Postgres SQL what Red Hat did for Linux. And Landmark's chairman, Frank Batten, as you probably know, had been an angel investor in Red Hat. So I was sitting in my little cubicle over at Landmark one day, and Frank sticks his head around the corner and says, "Hey, Ned, I want you to find me another Red Hat." So that was kind of how all that got started. So we launched Great Bridge. A bunch of us went over from corporate to start it. And it was super early. I think Landmark kind of lost patience. I actually offered to buy it. I had a Japanese systems integrator that we were doing a joint venture with in Tokyo, commit a reasonable amount of money to buy them out. And they just said, no, we're going to shut it down. So at that point, I was like, okay, it's been a great ride here. I've learned a lot of interesting things, worked with a lot of interesting people. Time to do my own thing. So one of the things that I had been developing inside of Great Bridge was, nobody just buys a piece of database software. I mean, you're always looking for some kind of application to run on it, whether you build it or buy it or what have you. And so I had been kind of scouring the earth, finding people who had built business applications on top of this Postgres SQL database. And one of the guys I met had been building this ERP system for small, mid-sized manufacturers. So I thought, that's interesting. And, got to talking and ended up saying, well, this is a real enough thing. And there's this huge sort of gap at the sort of low end of the market where you kind of small to mid-sized manufacturing companies really needed the same kind of inventory control and shop floor control and sales and purchasing and all that stuff that the big guys needed, but just the economics didn't work. The economics didn't work for the big vendors to come down to them. The economics didn't work for the smaller companies to write those big checks. And the thesis was that open source software could kind of help bridge that gap. And so we had built the initial product on top of Postgres and some other open source pieces. and then later down the line ended up open sourcing the application itself, or at least sort of a small starter version of it. But anyway, that long story short, that's how what was originally called OpenMFG got started in 2001.
Are you technical by nature, or did you have to hire for that?
I know enough to be dangerous. I can read code. I can write bad code. Would not presume to call myself a developer, which is good now because now I can get ChatGPT to write code for me, right?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to jump too far ahead too quickly. That was one of the questions lined up was, what would it be like today starting xTuple compared to what it was like back in 2001, 2002?
It's a whole new world, and
yeah.
We see it in my current gig doing technology investment banking. Talking to all these companies that are in various stages of getting ready to go out to market, and it can be scary. It can be super exciting, right? But yeah, one reason we did what we did with xTuple back in the day was the world didn't necessarily need another ERP software. Even then, there's plenty of them. In fact, I had this snarky personal blog site called the ERP Graveyard that just did nothing but make fun of all these companies that got rolled up into Oracle and Epicor and Infor and all the big guys. Took some very biting swipes at private equity people, and so of course the world came full circle when I in fact sold my company to a private equity-backed roll-up of other manufacturing software. But anyway, the reason we did what we did, kind of getting around to answering your question, Tim, was the thought was if we got a bunch of people, sort of a broader community of developers, and literally worldwide, involved in the ongoing development and maintenance of the product, then maybe that could help us scale up and build something kind of cooler, faster, more competitive than we'd be able to do if we were just sitting there trying to hire our own programmers.
With that, how did you overcome the challenges of finding talent locally? That's like one of the biggest things that people talk about here is access to talent, access to technical talent. Yeah, how did you did you have those challenges, and how did you overcome them?
I would say we had a core group of folks that were already local. One guy had been at Great Bridge with me before. Actually, a couple of guys had. We had some success recruiting out of ODU. We had a bunch of people move. I would say our best source of talent over the years ended up being existing partners and customers that had gotten familiar with the software, and honestly, we found getting people to move to the 757 was not a hard thing. Cost of living, water. A lot of them came from bigger, more expensive metro areas. So we didn't have the challenge of recruiting, huge numbers of people at scale, which is probably a different question. But for the handful of roles that we were always looking for, we had pretty good success with that mix. In fact, going back to start Norfolk, we actually met a bunch of people there that we ended up bringing on in technical roles.
It's interesting. Dominion Enterprises, that was kind of one of their reasons to be a partner of ours. It's like, hey, like you guys are getting these people in here that when they don't work out, we're going to hire. Because it's like, I remember Joe Fuller once told me, he was like, it costs us $20,000 to find the right talent. And all we have to do is go across the street and write a bigger check than that to find these people. It actually becomes a really smart business decision for us. One thing you didn't say though is you also had a bunch of user groups out of your office. You did the conference,
Yep.
xTupleCon and stuff like that. So you were constantly attracting, I think, local and external traffic to the xTuple brand, which I think was cool. You had that badass sign. I remember when that got installed.
Yeah, that was fun. We had a customer that was a sign manufacturer, and so we basically did a swap. We built them a sort of a advanced project management module that we were happy to have that in the ERP now, but they got that for free, and we got 2 signs. Big one out front and a little one on the side. In fact, the little one on the side is now in my garage, hanging up on the wall.
Nice. If I recall, that was a bank.
Yep, it was the old Southern Bank of Norfolk.
Have you been there? Had you ever been there?
Yeah, okay. It was a really cool space. What's in there now, or is it?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this because I don't think we did sell it to a local party concurrent to when we sold the business. They haven't done anything with it yet, so I'd probably better not publicly say. You would recognize the name, though.
Well, all right. A little tease and a little diversion. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Ned Lilly.
I'll be here all week.
Have you ever done stand-up comedy? I mean, I feel like you're always like a witty, like kind of guy. Like, have you ever done it?
Well, we had the exposed brick walls in the office, so we'd all sort of practice our craft there, standing up in front of the brick wall.
But no, she's right down the street, right? Or was right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, on Granby.
So
go ahead, Zach.
I mean, the name Great Bridge for a business sounds badass too, by the way. Like, I don't know what it is. I live in Great Bridge now, which is crazy. But like from a business perspective, that like it just rings really nice for a multiple word business name. Like, that's nice.
It was ahead of its time, and if they had either stuck it out themselves or let me buy it, I think it would have been a great success story. I remember when we came up with the name, there were 4 of us from corporate staff, Al Ritter, Rob Strickland, Dave Mealy, and myself, sit down having a beer as we were sort of kind of spitballing the business plan and just bouncing names off each other. And the idea behind Great Bridge was sort of twofold. One, that we were sort of bridging the world of open source and sort of big business and making it sort of safe for companies. Because at the time, open source was sort of this kind of weird, new, scary thing for a lot of people. But then there was also, did some historical research, and the Battle of Great Bridge and the Revolutionary War, was fought, just down the street here. And so we made on the box for the product, and this is when we had box software, had a little description of the Battle of Great Bridge, so a picture of the old kind of metal sign that's standing up at the site, and talked about how these kind of scrappy rebels beat back the evil empire of the day, and sort of tied it into the open source story and that sort of themology. So anyways, yeah, it was fun.
It is a cool name. There's a couple. Is there a couple people have adopted the Great Bridge moniker, haven't they, Zach? I'm guessing it's probably pretty popular down where you're at.
A company, at least back in the day, like Great Bridge International. I can't remember what they did, but that's too long of a name. Just something about Great Bridge, like, and then also like there is a bridge, so it's like the Great Bridge, which is kind of funny. Like, I'm like, it's not just the Great Bridge, it's the Great Bridge bridge. So, well, I always appreciate your support over the stuff that we did over the years. Funny story, on this day in 2013, I guess you, myself, Lisa Fournier, and Sean Evangelista from Podium Probe were on Kathy Lewis's Hearsay show. This is a picture of us 12 years ago. I guess I used to rock the hoodie and the jacket move. Must have been real cold that day, even though it's March 20th, so I can't imagine. But that was fun doing the whole radio thing. I remember you guys being on there. So
I remember that, rocking the logo wear there.
You have to rock. Have to rock the brand. Okay, so when did the acquisition of xTuple happen?
It was July of 22.
Okay, so not too far ago. when did you start thinking about the selling of business? You get a lot of white collar service providers that are like, oh, you got to be thinking about selling your business at some point.
Well, backing that up, I mean, I guess I'm curious, this couldn't have been the first offer, or was it the first offer?
No, I mean, everybody that runs, technology software business with any kind of visibility is, beating off the sort of junior associates at all these places all the time, right? It's so no, we'd always had inbound interest. That's, like I said, it's pretty common, I think. And we had, pretty much bootstrapped from the get-go. Had a bunch of local friends and family investors. Actually was in the very first 757 Angels group, and had a couple of people participate from that. And that was actually weird because we were actually a reasonably mature company at that point, but I think they wanted somebody that had been around, that wasn't just kind of pure back of the napkin.
I remember that being controversial with some companies. Yeah. I don't know if you ever heard the chatter, but people would be like, why is xTuple getting money? They don't need money. I'm like, people can write the checks however they want. But
free country.
Yeah.
I mean, what type of I'm sorry, continue on. That's my bad.
No. But it had never done any institutional financing, right? Came close in 2012 with this one group, and sort of backed off of it. At that point, we were doing pretty well, and we were looking at not a rewrite, but sort of a sort of the next gen of the software, and made the decision to kind of fund that out of our own pockets instead of taking VC, which was good and bad in retrospect. I think we never really scaled up like I wanted to, and we were just, xTuple was sort of a single that I think we stretched into a triple maybe in the fullness of time. But we're always pretty undercapitalized. If I could go back to 2012, Ned, and say, give him some advice, I'd probably say take the money. The flip side was, never had that, anybody like that on my cap table. Never had a board. So when it did come time to sell, I basically was able to do whatever I wanted within the scope of reasonable fiduciary responsibility.
What were some of the conversations that you would have with your C-suite when you would get those first offers for acquisition, just nibbling on the line, so to speak? That you're like, hey, we're betting on ourselves, we're going forward. Yeah. What was that thought process?
I think I never really seriously entertained an acquisition offer until towards the end. It was more a question of, do we take the VC money or not? And when I was first getting started, I mean, I was flying out to Sand Hill Road and up to Boston all the time, and we were just too early at that point, But then by the time we were thinking about it in 2012, I kind of convinced myself we didn't need the money. But so anyway, didn't really seriously start thinking about exit until maybe like sort of 2011-ish, or I mean 2021. And so I had brought on a fractional COO who was great. I had a fractional CFO. So, a lot of that sort of hygiene stuff that sometimes you need to do to get ready for a transaction. I was, being proactive on that stuff at that point.
What, gosh, I don't know. You're such a humble, even keeled guy, that like I guess there's a couple things. One, we don't celebrate companies that have successful exits in this region enough.
Even to piggyback off that, like I remember when you guys acquired ArtSmith Media, I believe in 2013, they were a company that had come to town And then we're right next to Hatch in that top building above Mo O'Malley's before it became Benny's and all that stuff. And then xTuple acquires them. And I remember I was like, this is a bigger story than people are talking about. And people are like, no, it's not. I'm just like, no, it's like there was always a negative thing about acquisition. And it's so crazy. But I just want to put that caveat in there because I know that you did that in there. But Tim.
No, I mean, I think that it's a good conversation to have because I think that we need to celebrate this more often. Yeah, I mean, especially we just don't have a lot of companies in this area that have those successful exits, and we should showcase that and talk about that a whole lot more so that we can start that cycle all over again.
Yeah, no, agreed. And it is a cycle, right? You need to go kind of rinse, wash, repeat a couple of times, and that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I've sort of had M&A in my blood for a while now, going back to Landmark, as Zach mentioned, did a couple of acquisitions for xTuple. Literally when we started the company, started it by buying this pretty much one-man band in Pennsylvania that had a couple of customers on this really old, almost DOS-based software that we converted a bunch of them to what was then OpenMFG in the early days. Then did ArtSmith, which was basically a sort of an acqui-hire to get Josh, Sierra, and Andre on board, and they sort of became the nucleus of our sort of next-gen web product. And then came close to actually buying another company, chased them for a better part of a year. It was a Canadian company, actually, believe it or not, and in the sort of time tracking and payroll space, so kind of adjacent to the ERP stuff that we did, and similar technology. And that just got super complicated because of all the cross-border stuff, and ended up walking away from it. But the good folks at Williams and Mullen were rewarded handsomely for that effort, regardless.
They always are. It's always the lawyers who get paid. I mean, what is it about lawyers? Like, lawyers always get paid. It's crazy.
Too true.
Who was your main lawyer?
John Paris.
Shocker.
Yeah. He's the guy.
I wouldn't have. Yeah, that would have been one of the top guesses, or maybe the only guess.
Yep.
Love John. He's a great guy.
Yeah, it's a great team over there. I got nothing but good things to say about them.
Did you always feel like you were the leader in the region in terms of one of the big folks on the block in terms of startups, or did you just keep your head down and keep pushing?
Somewhere in the middle, probably. I mean, I think we always wanted to participate in stuff like Start Norfolk and Hatch, and later the accelerator and all the sort of more current 757 stuff. Even some of the downtown and other regional groups. So tried to kind of be reasonably active in that stuff and support the region how we could. I never felt like we were huge. We probably looked bigger than we were just because of the building and that sort of visibility. But I think we were maybe 35 people at our peak. Yeah,
as an outsider, I mean, you were, I wouldn't necessarily say intimidating, but you all were leading the pack in terms of you're running lead, and you're the ones that everybody was trying to follow.
Oh, well, thanks. Sure. It was a fun time. I remember we had a bunch of events, at the building. We had a pretty cool roof deck on top of it at one point. One thing I never got to do, I briefly, I'm going to overstate this. I played in a band for a little while that was formed sort of ad hoc to celebrate this one girl's 40th birthday. She was a big Go-Go's fan, so we all dressed up like the Go-Go's. And
were you Belinda Carlisle?
We got a real female singer to do lead vocals. I was the keyboard. But if you can picture, four, kind of middle-aged fat guys and wrapped up in towels and on their heads, playing all Go-Go's music. That was the genesis of the band. And we ended up playing together 3 or 4 more times. But I always wanted to do the sort of Beatles and U2 thing on that rooftop and never got that done. Sadly, that's a big regret in life.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
We could have the video crew filming when the police come shut us down, just like U2 did.
Yeah.
You mentioned the cycle aspect, and we, unbeknownst to you, we've used you as the example for a long time on this.
Yeah.
So how I look at that is like, okay, a company starts, it expands, it does well, they have some sort of exit. And then they go back in, they find participating in the community, as you said, throughout there. And then after that acquisition happens, maybe they make money for other people in the region, but those people then recycle and reinvest right back into it as a cycle. And I think that's something that you've always done. Is that something missing from this region? Like, do you see that other people are doing it? Because it seems like even from way back when in like 2010 timeframe, that was something that was always missing. Do you think that has evolved? People are getting more into it now. Like, what are your thoughts on just like people participating over and over and over again instead of just being like, okay, peace?
I think it's gotten a lot better, and I think there are more kind of people in that category now, and companies that have had some level of success and growth, and I think there have been the sort of center of gravity around the assembly building and grow and all that stuff, has been, I think, a big part of that. But there's still a bunch of companies here locally that people don't even know anything about. And I don't know if it's, including, some that I'm in regular contact with, so it's kind of interesting. I think there's probably culturally a little more of a keep your head down and do the work kind of thing here. I think it could. So the more of the sort of kind of regional social networking, collaborative type of programming there is that's trying to bring people in, the better, because I think people around here probably need a little bit more of a prod and a pull to be involved in that stuff.
Yeah, that is interesting. I did a talk yesterday, and that was one of the at CoLab, and that was just one of the things, like, just to explain to people that we are all part of this movement. We all we have to share our stories. We have to. You're not just acting alone. It takes all of us to like rise this tide, so that. I mean, we do it to attract capital, to attract talent, it takes all of us. And to your point, a lot of the founders, they keep their head down, and we have to really raise that flag so that everybody can see it.
And I think the more of the sort of collaboration type stuff that you all can do, the better. I think sometimes there's maybe a little too much of an emphasis on raising capital. I think, and I think that it's too easy for somebody not to participate if they think it's just about people trying to raise money, or in my case, look for some kind of exit. I think the more we can do to just kind of network and share stories and talk about the challenges, like the talent stuff, right? Or or people working on kind of different pieces of similar technologies. I think that was one of the cool things that came out of the start Norfolk's, was just seeing what kind of tools people were using. And, and a lot of it was, you guys know, just somebody's half-baked idea to build an app over a weekend, but there were a lot of cool stories and cool ideas. And I think the more we can do to sort of nourish that sort of kind of technical kind of brains infrastructure, the better, because I think that might be more successful at pulling people into some of these things than sort of an outsized emphasis on fundraising.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I like. The premise of the talk that I gave yesterday was, and going back to what Zach was saying, how we use you as an example a lot, is the premise of the talk was, hey, you need to have a team that builds a product. Therefore, you need to have the product, and that product then delight customers. So when you have a team and a product and customers, and you can get that flywheel spinning, then you're generating more revenue to reinvest in your team, to make the product better, to delight more customers, which generates more revenue. At that point, you do that really, really well. And as it turns out, you may not need to raise money from the VC side. You can continue to bootstrap. So like just telling them to focus on those three main categories and pieces of their business, and there's just so much distraction away from team, product, and customers.
Yeah, I know when I'm one of a bunch of people that do the evaluations of the applicants for Accelerate every year, and just going through those. I mean, that's what you were just talking about, Tim, is top of my list. I mean, do these, are these people talking to customers? Do they have, do they have that real concept of going to market, and do they know what people are willing to pay for? Because it's I think the businesses that take off, obviously, have that at least that initial product market fit, and they've got somebody that may not be paying what will eventually be full freight for the solution, but if they're willing to write a check, then that's validation. Yeah, that sounds pretty basic, but I think sometimes people get all excited and don't necessarily get to that point when they should.
One thing towards the end of Start Norfolk, when we were kind of retired, that we started implementing, is I bought 50 pounds of Legos, and I was like, now build something, now go on Granby Street and sell it. And people are like, this is dumb. And I'm like, it's not dumb. If you're not willing to go meet people for a Lego thing, it was trying to instill them, you have to talk to people. And right. So you as a team build this thing with Legos and then go sell it. And people are like, well, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'm just like, I get it. But that's part of the challenge, is that you got to get over the fact that you have to talk to customers or potential people. And it's interesting to me because, you see these organizations that are like, go do customer discovery. I think customer discovery it's not enough. It's like, talk to people, but then get something out of them as well. Because you could say hey, give me all this information. It's like, well, they check the box. They seem like they're the right fit. But until they're pulling out their wallet, or in Tim's case, hitting a phone with it because he uses Apple Cash for everything, Apple Pay, that's not a real transaction. So it's a false narrative in my mind. It's basically my mom telling me I'm a good singer when we know I'm not, right? It's like, you have to get this real information from people. And customer discovery, I feel like, is just, it's not a deep enough task to get from people. You have to actually get these transactions, and it could be $5, like you were saying. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but is someone willing to actually make a transaction with you is the single most important thing in a business. Because if they're not, you have a hobby.
Right. And to kind of underscore that, it's so much more about listening than telling. I mean, then the old line is, God gave you 2 ears and only one mouth, and there's a reason.
Yeah, and that's I mean, they're going into the talk yesterday. That was the same deal. It's like, your customers will give you your entire product roadmap. Just talk, to your customers and listen. They will tell you everything that you need to know.
Yep. But it's not uncommon for particularly kind of highly technical types to not be comfortable in that sales mode.
That's right.
I mean,
We'll hire a salesperson.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, it's not most, but a good number of the companies I'm working with now, it's technical founders. They've got a really cool product. They've got that product market fit. They've been out there making money for X number of years. And the question as an investment banker you always ask is, well, why now? Why do you want to find some type of transaction, whether it's a merger, sale, recap, what have you? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is we aren't able to scale it past where we are under our own power, and we think we would do better. The product could really take off with the right partner, that could help take it to the next level. And so there's a lot of that, literally 9 times out of 10, that's the rationale for these kind of founder-owned technology companies that I typically work with. And the good news is, there was so much money out there for those type of deals.
If you slap AI on it, then skip to the front of the line.
Yeah. Cynically, I would say my advice to every founder out there is, if you don't have the .ai version of your domain name, get it today.
Yeah.
But there's north of $1 trillion just sitting in the pockets of strategic acquirers, right? The sort of the usual suspects, the big guys, the big technical companies. But even more than that, there's probably 3, maybe 4 trillion of dry powder from the private equity people, right? And their portfolio companies, and they've got these. It's much more of a kind of platform and bolt-on type of model than it used to be. Probably for every platform company that PE has now, they'll have 5 or 6 bolt-ons, right? And so the floor for companies looking to kind of grow that way is much lower than it used to be. We've seen PEs do deals for companies that are only $1 million in sales. So it's and unlike the strategics, the PEs have to spend the money. That's their job.
Dig into that. What are you doing now? What occupies your time these days?
Well, so I sold xTuple in summer of 22. I briefly kind of tried to retire. Golf game didn't get any better, and so the company that bought us is a private equity funded roll up of other manufacturing software companies. Basically, we were the first acquisition under the new PE ownership. They've since done 5 or 6 additional bolt-ons. So it's the exact same model I just finished talking about. And I actually helped them. Stuck around for 9 months after the transaction, and helped them identify a couple of deals. And it, like I said, it kind of rekindled the M&A bug for me. And so I've been aware of Corum Group for some time. So Corum is a 40-year-old sell-side technology investment bank that does literally nothing but software and technology. And kind of what's interesting about them, they've done north of 500 deals, successful exits, and they only hire people like me who have done their own successful exit from a software company. So literally all my peers are people who have been there, done that. And so when we're sitting down talking to companies that are, at various stages of that journey, it's obviously you've been there in that seat, you've done that, so it seemed like a very natural place for me to kind of bump around for a little while. And so that's what I'm doing, and just having a ball. So I've got 5 or 6 companies I'm working with now. that are, like I said, in various kind of steps along that road, ranging from kind of health tech to military tech to law enforcement tech to one that's very similar to xTuple, manufacturing, warehouse stuff. Just lots of really interesting companies that just really all over the place in terms of technology. And everyone at Corum is exposed to all the deals at the company. So we've got probably 120 companies in market right now. And so, but we're all sort of up to date on what all of those companies are doing. And, we've got this kind of shared database of all the deal terms and all the buyers that we're talking to every day. So it's really this kind of giant, wonderful machine. And like I said, just having fun.
What was the biggest surprise or thing that you learned now sitting on the other side of the table?
It's a good question. Think about that. Yeah, because it was really the one seat at the table that I hadn't sat in, right? I'd sort of been the corporate VC, the buyer, obviously the seller. I think the biggest surprise. I don't know. I think maybe just the breadth and depth of what's out there. And it's kind of like what we were talking about here locally, but sort of writ large. You just have no idea how many technology companies are out there and have been just kind of quietly doing the work for all these years. And there's a lot of them there's sort of some generational turnover right now. So you got a lot of boomer age people that are aging out the business, and so there's a lot of succession planning type of color to it, and very often, the kids don't want the business, so that sort of drives the interest in M&A in a lot of cases.
Your words. Specifically, I remain bullish on Hampton Roads as a region and would love to be helpful for local tech companies however I can. It's a two-part portion. So why are you bullish on that? Why do you remain bullish? What do you think about the region? How has it changed over the years since we met at Baxter's in 2012 or whenever that was? Like, what's changed? Why are you so bullish?
I think it's a great place to live, and I kind of start there. That's foundational for me. Obviously I was actually born in Richmond, but grew up here, raised my family here. It's my little neighborhood in West Ghent. I mean, literally on the 4th of July, they have the kids all put the flags and streamers on their bikes. There's a little parade. The fire truck swirls around Graydon Park and blasts the hose. I mean, it's Norman Rockwell. We've got all this water. We've got some sort of foundational stuff. Cost of living is great. So I mean, I think it's a great place to live first and foremost. All the stuff that you guys are doing with the various 757 groups now, and it's so much more. There's so much more infrastructure and support for early stage companies, than there was when I was getting started, and that's really gratifying to me. And like I said, I want to kind of help that however I can, individually, and then wearing my Corum hat too. Certainly, I mean, I think part of the work in this is meeting people early on and trying to, like I say, be useful to them, right? Because, not everybody is, ready to start thinking about M&A right now. But you ought to be. You ought to be, sort of deliberate and thoughtful and think, what is my exit plan, even if it's 10 years down the road, and how can I sort of optimally plan for that, and prepare, get all the, and take the steps now that will put me in the best position for, a good result in the end.
Where do you get your deal flow from? Is it typically inbound, or do you do a lot of outbound searching?
No, actually, that was the other thing that was sort of attractive about Corum is it's really, I use the word machine and I meant it as a compliment. It's Corum does an enormous amount of sort of educational work, marketing disguised as education on the M&A process, if you will. Literally, probably half a dozen live events online every week. I do them. Everybody in my role does them. So there are these there's a 90-minute version. There's a half-day version. That's just here's the kind of boot camp for how M&A works in the tech space. And they do a great job of reaching out to founders and bringing them into that. So we see, probably 12, 13,000 companies a year that come to these events. So no shortage of deal flow, to use your term. It's and these are people that are technology CEOs, founders that are are at least interested enough in M&A to sign up for one of these things. But there's a lot of market research. There's 20 some different subsectors of the software and tech space that they've got Corum's got a global team of analysts that's kicking out this research, literally weekly, monthly. So there's just a lot of content that I think, as somebody who's gets a lot of this stuff and has for years, I think Corum's as good at it as anybody in the world.
I've never heard of it said like that, but I wrote it down because it was great. Marketing disguised as education. Totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, if you're really good at helping people, it ends up becoming, so many things come from that. Obviously, you're creating a ton of value, a ton of trust. You could slip in, things that might help them that are purchased, from that company. It totally makes sense. So,
and we want, we want our clients to be as prepared and ready when we take them to market. So, if we can help them, kind of, figure out what they've got to get ready for the due diligence process, if they're doing cash accounting in QuickBooks, let's get you converted to accrual. Let's get you tracking your, revenues by customer in a way that's going to be, what buyers going to be looking for. There's just a lot of that kind of stuff that's low hanging fruit that, if you can get people educated about it early in the process, then, they're that much better prepared and ready to go when they are ready to go.
And I know the answer will be, it depends, but what is the typical lead time? How far in advance should a founder think about going into the M&A? Just peeking in the doorway to see what possibilities are out there.
I think you should always be thinking about it.
Yeah.
What's your time horizon? That's where it depends, I guess. But I think everybody's when you're first getting started, you've probably got at best a 5-year horizon or kind of guesswork. As you start being more of an operating business, maybe it kind of trims back to 3 years. But I think you always ought to be thinking, what do I want out of this? And particularly if you've got investors, right? Then you have a serious fiduciary obligation to what's going to be best for them. And my friends and family investors were very, very, very patient. And they and I would not have been able to do what I did with xTuple without them. So when time came to kind of get serious about an exit, made the investments I needed to try and get the best possible outcome. So I kind of did my version of the Corum prep work. Actually, didn't use Corum, believe it or not. I used another bank that I thought was kind of younger, scrappier, hungrier. They ended up doing a great job for me, but it was funny. It was more expensive on the back end, less upfront. And so my rationale was, I'm paying all this money now for a COO and a CFO. I can't be paying huge banker retainers too. The punchline, though, is I went back and ran the numbers afterwards, after I started with Corum, and I had the sort of rate comparisons, and it came out to almost exactly the same what it would have been if I'd used Corum. It was literally within like $100.
Well, it's great information for our audience to listen to. Because like one of the things that Zach and I say often is like the time that you need to establish that relationship with the banker is like
yesterday,
long before you need money today. Establish that years in advance.
Relationships 101. When you need something is not when you should be asking for creating that relationship.
Correct.
Or like it's just do it now. Yeah.
And I mean, speaking for myself, I'm sure other kind of tech bankers would be the same way. We're doing this because we like it, and we like building those relationships. We like helping companies grow and succeed. And obviously, and that's the investment we make. I'm happy to do it. And if I can, turn around and if I have have been sort of a sounding board, unofficial advisor over a couple of years, when they do get ready to go to market. And hopefully, like you say, we've got that relationship, we've got that trust, and and I'll do well by helping them do well.
What's something we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
Well, I don't want to talk about UVA basketball. So we established that.
But why?
Let's see. We touched on it, but we haven't really talked AI much. You guys have covered that in other ways in other shows, but one other sort of piece of advice I would give to anyone in any kind of software tech founders, folks out there, we're sort of in the middle of the hype cycle right now, obviously. But it's very real, and there are entire categories of work and functions that are just going to disappear. And we talked a little earlier about it. I think how people write code and build solutions is dramatically changing, and I think anybody that's in a technology business that doesn't have an AI component to their story, better get one soon. And I don't mean kind of lipstick. I mean, think about what you've got. One situation that we see a lot, because I mean the whole space of LLMs and agents and everything is moving so quickly and is so hyper funded at a ginormous level that it's very hard to imagine being competitive in that space. But you think about, what do you do well? What are the business processes that your customers go through every day? And then what data have you built up over the years with your solution? So that's something we see a lot with some of these sort of kind of small to mid-size software companies that have been around for a while. They end up having a ginormous amount of data that can be super useful for lots of different business applications that may be sort of adjacent to what they're doing right now, but they're a great use case to start training AI models on. So think about your data. That would be the number one piece of advice. Don't necessarily say, I'm going to go build myself another chatbot, but think about your data.
Yeah, that data is So valuable. It is, boy, and people will pay a lot of money for that data so they can train their LLMs.
The models are only as good as what informs them, right?
Yeah, we always say that you are not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone using AI, and you have to have that AI first mentality before doing anything.
Yeah.
I call AI the robots, by the way. So I think it just sounds better than AI. What else?
Why?
Tim?
Well, we always close every show with one last question, and it is, if there was a food or a beverage of the region, what would it be?
Oh. Well, that's a really interesting question. I think historically, I would probably say she crab soup.
I think that might be another first timer, Zach.
Is it really? No one's ever said that before.
From Freemason Abbey? That like your go-to?
No, there was a place out the beach on Shore Drive that was sort of the go. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Maybe Charlie's, maybe. But it was like literally people would come from all around to get the she crab soup.
Okay. So if we were to say that from a restaurant perspective, like you're bringing in one of your M&A teammates into town, they're gonna be here. You want to take them to a restaurant. Like, what's your go-to place to take them to?
Oh gosh, my home away from home that I've literally probably had 10,000 meals is Luna Maya in Ghent, and it's just great, fresh. It's not Tex-Mex; it's Bolivian, but they just sort of answer to Tex-Mex now because they've gotten beaten down over the years. But when my girls were babies, we would take them to the original location out on Aragona Shopping Center. Take the baby carrier, stick it up on the table, and we've just been going there for 25 years.
10,000 meals at Luna Maya. That's on Cali, right?
It's on Cali, yeah.
Yeah, that is a good place. I dig it.
If that's a true, like, factual data point, as we're talking about know your data, Luna Maya should have like a menu with your name on it, a seat with some gold plates on it, or something like. That's ridiculous. 10,000 meals. Holy moly.
Yeah, we used to
professional.
We used to my I think both girls worked there for some period of time hostessing during college. It was whenever they both live in New York now, whenever they come back to town, that's the first place we go.
There you go. Ned, it's been awesome. Got a page full of notes. This was, well, you couldn't really see that, but
I believe you.
It was great. Good to see your handsome face. Your words. Haven't seen you in a while. Congrats on the success, the exit, and all of that. And
this is fun.
We will not talk about that team in Charlottesville. So
tomorrow is another day, my friend.
Hey, we don't have a coach either. I don't know if you guys ever got a coach. We just lost ours to Indiana. Football season. Let's go. Like,
this is make or break time for Tony Elliott now.
Yeah. So we appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, guys. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.